All right. It actually worked for once. All right.
Nice.
Yeah,
So well.
yeah. This has been a real issue getting the Zoom to work. I mean,
Mm.
whether it's the Zoom or the Be Live, I'm glad that one of them is working. So, all right. For those tuning in, we are joined this hour by Alejandro Jimenez. Take us away. Share us a poem. Share your gift.
For sure. Let me see. I was trying to figure out which one to just say. I've been feeling this poem lately, so I'll read it. It's called I wrote it recently. It's called "Sing Me a Brown Song." It was after a poem I read by Nikki Giovanni. So it goes like this. Sing me a brown song until your mouth breathes fire like a sweat lodge. Sing me a brown song until it is known that the singular of tamales is tamal, not tamale. And we claim Spanish as our second language, English our third. We've existed since before there was a word for tongue. Sing me a brown song on your caballo, on your troca, on your impala, in your botas, in your cortezes, in your guaraches, in your danza azteca, until the smell of copal surpasses the smell of patchouli for the hippiest shit ever. Sing it until my homies start accepting credit cards at the healing ceremonies. Sing me a brown song until el chico del apartamento 512 gets a house with the yard, and your heartbreak becomes a wood stove in the middle of winter, and we learn to tame the wildfires with our bed sheets and become firefighters for the sole reason that we like to carry water in our hands, and we learn to juggle hot coals like we do our insecurities, and we kiss each other like volcano smoke kisses the sky, and we fall into each other's palms like our torsos fall into each other after climax. Sing me a brown song until ice melts into water, and we plant gardens on the rubble of detention centers, and we make swing sets out of its metal and steel, and we play wall ball and graffiti that wall, and we make wind chimes and chandeliers out of their melted guns, and we hear them howl like a hanging purgatory, like wind finding its birthplace, like a river finding its feet and shoes. Sing me a brown song with the prayers left at street corners. Sing it until the candles at funerals burn, because our loved ones have risen and they are returning with jars full of tears that turn into honey wine. Sing until rosary becomes a word for story time about flowers. Sing me a brown song, because some days I do not like what I'm turning myself into. I keep adding more wood to the fire, watch it burn, hear it crackle, and wonder what blue handgun will turn my skin into a hand drum. Some days I let my demons win. Let their whispers make me smile. I do not like myself on those days. So sing me a brown song for the days I wish my forest into ash, for the days I have no sail to put out to the wind, for the days I think, you know, my stomach might just make a good instrument.
Wow, wow, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So you're a poet based out of right now currently out of Denver, Colorado. Is that correct?
I was. I moved from Denver in July, last July. So right now I'm in Eugene, Oregon. While my girlfriend finishes up her master's degree here at the university. But but yeah, I'm out here in Oregon. You know, back
Okay.
to one of my homes. Right, I grew up here and I moved away for the last decade. So but yeah,
Okay.
back for the time being.
Well, you made your name as a. Well, we can talk about Eugene in a minute, but you made your name as a poet in the city of Denver.
Yeah.
Can you tell our audience who might not be familiar with what the Denver poetry scene is like, what the slam scene is like, and just kind of general overview?
Yeah, I didn't know, when I moved there in '09, summer of '09, I heard like different poets in Denver refer to Denver as like the mecca of like slam poetry or performance poetry, right? And so I was coming in like the tail end of that. So 2006, you had like the Mercury Slam team, the Mercury Cafe win national championship. You had like Amy Everhart, Andrea Gibson, Ken Arkin, Panama Soweto, Lucy Fury, Bob, like all these like amazing poets, right? That are coming out of that scene, and you had kind of like I think Slam Nooba, which the team I ended up being on. I think what's like in their second or third year of inception, right? And so yeah, it was like any fucking given night, you can go to like a random open mic and it would just be like, just fucking like awesome poets, you know? It'd
Yeah,
be like, and so you're just always surrounded by, whether it was like the slam scene, right? You go to the Merc or you go to Slam Nooba, Cafe Nooba, you know, and then you got like your dose of like performance slam poetry. But then you go to places like Cafe Cultura or the Speak Out, freedom of speech. It was kind of more like, you know, spoken word esque type venues, you know. But then, and then other small venues. So it was like always like just poetry was around, and you had the access to that, whether again, whether it was like slam or whether it was more traditional poetry and everything in between.
yeah,
So for me as an artist, it was really, I didn't know that existed, you know. Coming from Oregon, I was like, oh, what is this, you know? Brown people and black people, like, you know, I was like,
yeah,
I've only seen this on YouTube and like on HBO, you know. I didn't know this existed in real life, you
yeah,
know. Being surrounded by like, you know, like pine trees and like rednecks, you know.
yeah,
So yeah, so I was like, holy shit, like, so I just like fucking threw myself in there. I wrote a little bit in college, you know, but I had like my 3 or 4 poems. I was like, oh, these are good poems, you know. But then like show up to these open mics and I was like, oh man, I got a lot of work to do, you know, and I
yeah,
have a lot to say. I felt like I had a lot to say, you know. And so yeah, it was really cool to be fostered in as a poet in that community, you know, and just really grateful that like I had zero idea that, you know, Denver had that much poetry going on for it, you know, and really grateful that like it just, when I moved there, I didn't know anything and landed in like this really awesome artistic, you know, community, you know.
yeah, yeah. So can you tell our audience a little bit about Slam Nuba and how it developed and where and why it happened? Because Denver, I remember, you know, I remember going to nationals. You know, I only went twice, but I remember Denver always had like two teams, and it was like they were both powerhouses. So
Yeah.
can you talk about the develop? I know the Mercury goes way back, but
Hmm.
Slam Nuba kind of developed a little bit afterwards. But they're both very powerful. So can you talk about Slam Nuba a little bit?
Yeah, so Slam Nooba, we go ahead. I've been in the team twice in 2012 and 2017. But yeah, I mean, like the history that I know, you kind of like like I said, like its birthplace comes out of Cafe Nooba, which is run by Ashara Kundayo, and you know, I think I've heard a couple versions, right? Like, you know, there were a lot of poets, a lot of slam teams, you know, or a lot of slam poets, and only one slam team in the Denver area, right? Which is the Merc, right? And has its history, right? And then there was like the other version that I heard was like, yeah, there's one slam team, and you know, we have these other a bunch of like brown and black poets that don't got a team, right? Because traditionally Merc's been white, right?
Yeah,
You know, or traditionally, right? And so Cafe Nuba being this like you know, Afrocentric, you know, place, it was like, oh, how can we, you know, make this space, this team, right? And so boom, you know, you have this team that is born, you know, and I think the first year was like Panama Soweto, freaking Bobby Lefebvre, Theo Wilson, Original Woman, I think maybe Isis Booth was in it, right? Bianca McCom was the coach. Susie Q was like the manager, I believe, or vice versa. So, um, yeah, and so like again, it was just like, you know, that's how I understand its history, you know, and like how it was told to me and it was passed down. Just like this need to have a space of slam team that was for artists and poets of color, you know, that were traditionally, you know, maybe not welcomed as much, you know, in other venues, you know.
yeah. And how about can you tell us a little bit about Cafe Cultura? What was that? Anytime I talk to anybody about Denver poetry, especially from our community, that Cafe Cultura seems to come up.
Yeah, yeah, Cafe Cultura. That was a cool place too. You know, I think that came out of um, I I think the link between Cafe Cultura and Slam Nuba, and Cafe Nuba, right, is that it was also incorporating like a lot of activism, right? A lot of the poets that were part of those venues or went to those venues uh, were also like cultural and community leaders or activists, right? In their own right. And so Cafe Cultura comes out of this the protesting like the Columbus Day fucking marches that they used to have in fucking Denver. All the fucking Italians would come and be like, yeah, fucking Columbus, right? And I'll be all like the indigenous people are like, well, motherfucker, like killed everybody, like, so and he was like the fucking father of colonization. Like, what the fuck? Why are you celebrating this guy, right? So we know that history, right? And so it comes out of that, right? One of those protests, like a bunch of poets, like a fucking arrested and shit for blocking the fucking like the parade, and so there's like video of them like fucking like saying poems towards like towards like the fucking like jail or cell or whatever the fuck. I'm like, oh
yeah.
wow, that's pretty cool. So it's born out of that, what was that?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's born out of that, and like people were like, had this vision. The co-founders had this vision, and Bobby LaFleur being one of them. Had this vision. I'm like, hey, how can we create this? There's Cafe Nooba that's kind of seen like this as like this black, arts venue. There's the Mercury Cafe that's seen as this white venue. How can we create something for like the brown indigenous community of both, right? Northern natives, southern natives, immigrants, whatever, immigrants from like the Latin America or whatever. How can we create this? And so it comes out of that, and yeah, it was dope. You got like, I'm definitely biased, but I think it was probably for a few years, like one of the most well-attended venues. Was once a month. You got like 150, 200 people any given time. Sometimes if you had bigger events and hosted in a different venue, you got fucking upwards of like 300 people. It was fucking packed, right? And you get really motherfucking like really cool acts come through, and then again, it's another venue that's like not slam necessarily, but it was just like, super awesome to just be in the presence of just brown fucking people, and indigenous artists and black people and whatever, so it was awesome, so Cafe Cultura is definitely for me, as an artist, definitely left or probably like a big stepping stone to what I did as an artist, and obviously, equally Slam Nooba as well. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's incredible. So you did a TED talk out that way. Can you tell us audience kind of like how you felt about it, and what's the general experience of doing a TED talk, and then also like what was your particular what was, before you get into what you talked about, just talk about what it's like to be doing the TED.
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure of doing 3 TED Talks already, or presenting. Or I really say I've done 1 TED Talk, and really the other 2 have been just performances.
Mm-hmm.
So I presented my work at 3 TED Talks. But it's great. My experience has been good. And it's something I never really thought. I was like, I saw it and people would do it, and I'm like, that's cool. But it's like, if it comes around my way, I'll do it. And I saw like, people posted like, hey, just audition for this, blah blah blah, and I was like, cool, like audition for it, and it was really awkward. I was like, at that moment, I was like, well, what's really like tugging on my heartstrings? What poem or work? What do I want to say, right? And at that time, I was working with youth, and have been for like the last 10 years of my life, right? And so brown and brown young men specifically, right? So I had like a couple series of poems around like masculinity and being brown and what does that mean and all that kind of stuff. So like I auditioned with that, wrote like a little thing about my story with masculinity, being an immigrant, blah blah. How do we navigate that kind of stuff? And yeah, I went auditioned and they like called me back. They're like, yeah, man, you got it. I was like, cool, when did the millions start falling from the sky? They still haven't fallen from the sky.
Millions are in the mail. They're in the mail.
Yes, somewhere in another fucking like dimension or something. So it was really awesome. The thing that I really loved, I'm an introvert, so I like I loved, and like I love the attention, and by attention meaning being in front of like 2,000 people is like fucking nerve-wracking, right? 250,000 people or 200, 500 people, right? And like this beautiful opera house, it's fucking sold out. People are like fucking like just, it's fucking great, It's so fucking nerve-wracking, At the same time, it's like fuck, like I have to like make sure I'm on point and that kind of stuff, And then yeah, you just get like, like the organizers are like, yeah, you're gonna be treated like a rock star once this is over, like they're like, at least in our little world,
Yeah.
and it's very much like poetry, right? You go to these national competitions, and the person that like does a poem, they're like, oh shit, we want to like kiss their feet and like whatever, right? um and we think they're amazing and great. And it was like that, but like times 100, because you got 2,000 freaking people, so like they're like, yeah, just do your thing, we'll do your talk, and then we'll have intermission, and just go fucking stand out there, and then just shit's gonna fucking get real. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I did my talk, and I went out there, and it was like, holy fuck, it was just like a horde of people just coming to every speaker, right? To every speaker, coming, be like, blah blah blah, I like this, I like that, I like that. It was great. And so I was like, I was just like fucking emotionally overloaded, right? Because it was like, emotional topic that I shared, and just drained. I was like, man, like I don't want to talk to this many people, like I fucking hate small talk anyway, So I was like, fuck, like but it's awesome, it's awesome for me, I do know, like other people haven't had that great of experience, the one big piece of advice that I was giving by fellow poets who have done talks, but it was like, have your limits and your boundaries of what you're willing to compromise and not willing to compromise. Have to, you don't have to state them, but like make sure you hold them true to yourself. And if at any point you feel like you're compromising, then obviously you make a decision that you need to make and want to make. And yeah, I'm luckily for me, never had to come to that. My biggest boundary was like, yeah, once you start censoring me or asking me to change things, like I'm like, that's it, or taking the content away of my story and what I want to say, like it's over. And luckily it's never happened. You never had to have those conversations. And the 3 times that I've done it, it really allowed me to just say what I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting what you mentioned, like coming off stage and being bombarded with people. Yesterday, I was talking to Joyce Lee from Oakland, and she had mentioned coming off stage from a large show. I think it was uh, Snapchat. It was thousands of people in the audience, right? And she mentioned that, and I know I have my own experiences when you do the doing shows, when you practice and you hone your craft to get it to a certain point, that no matter what you're feeling, you're going to convey a certain amount of thing just out of professionalism. So
For
you're
sure.
doing this thing that's very, for the audience, powerful, and then they come up to you, but they're living their own experience. They're listening to your words, but they're also thinking about things that they've gone through that are similar, and you're evoking these strong emotions in them. And then you come off stage, and no matter what you're feeling, they're gonna they come at you with the weight of their whole lives. And if there's a line of them, that can be really overwhelming. I mean, do you share that feeling?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And it's like, and first of all, it's like really humbling, right? And like really feels really awesome, to just feel like that, and be seen like that, especially, when you feel you haven't fucking been acknowledged or seen, right? If you come from, the background that I come from, or whatever, right? And so it feels really awesome, yeah. But yeah, I'm like fuck, like I'm also a person, and so when we put people in like these pedestals of like, I'm like, cool, you gave this amazing talk, or you gave this amazing performance, and you're this amazing artist, or thinker, intellectual, like and I connected with you now, like give me the same energy that you gave on stage, but individually, right? And so this, and I'm like, well, fuck, and in one way I'm like, yeah, because I like connecting with people, but another way is like, I still gotta like make sure I don't fucking burn out,
Yeah.
because
And,
then there's like 20 fools like fucking waiting, right?
that's the
Uh,
part. That's the part. It's the line. It's not the one-on-one. It's like there's a line, and it's like coming at you all. It's just it's too much for any one individual.
yeah,
It's
for
back to
sure,
back to back to back to back. Yeah. It's
for sure, and that's the hard part sometimes, and sometimes, when it's like, and again, I'm not an asshole, and so I don't want to be like, all right, you get 2 seconds of Alejandro time. That's
right,
like
of course.
fucking like so egotistical, but at the same time, as like, in whatever venue is like, what if like there's like, I don't know what bugged me the most about that what was difficult to navigate about that is like, you know, you got like 3 or 4 white people in front, and then there's like the person of color, and I'm like, I want to connect with them, you know, like I like, because at face value, I'm like, you know, and to be like completely like stereotypical, I'm like, I feel like I might connect with them better, right? Again, I'm not like trying to minimize people's experiences, how they experience the work, right? But for me, you know, like I'm like brown people, like where are they? I want to connect with you, right? So like, you know, I want to make sure that like I am emotionally present and have emotional, you know, gas, if you will, to you know, be present with those people, you know,
Yeah.
or with them as much as possible.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. So you mentioned though that you gave the TED talk about some of the work you had been doing with the youth there in Denver. So what work was that? What were you involved with? What projects was this?
Yeah, so I've been um, I've been in like the student counseling, student advising realm for the last 10 years of my life, right? So poetry's just kind of been like a hobby that I do, you know. It's never been something that I dive in fully, right? There's spurts of it. And so, yeah, so at that time, so people always ask me, oh, the poem you shared the, you know, the poem for brown boys, you know, where it comes from. So I don't know my biological father left us when I was like fucking like 2 months old, right? Even before then, he like asked my mom to like abort me, right? Because he's like, it's not my kid. And my mom's like, really, motherfucker? Like I've only had sex with you for the last fucking 2 years, you know? And so so one and two, like is when I started working at that particular school where that poem came from, you know, it was like a college studies class. So I was getting like the students ready. Okay, what is the college admission process going to look like, right? Let's dissect that, right? There's the personal essay, which we all, you know, get taught to write or whatever. And so I was like, hey, you know, talk about blah blah blah, something that's changed your life. And I noticed that like a lot of students are giving me their prompts, right? And I got like I got like about a student body of like 30 students, you know, all brown for the most part, and most of them, you know, children or of immigrants or immigrants themselves, right? And I see that like a lot of them like, oh, my father not being present, or absentee fathers, and I did something that you probably shouldn't do in front of a classroom. I just outed every single student. I was like, yo, how many of you like your daddy's gone, right? Like your daddy fucking like, you know, he kicked rocks, you know, where the fuck, where is he at, right? And like 25 out of 30, not in my life, right? And out of like the 25 students, you know, like there were like a handful that were like legit, right? Died, got deported, he's in jail, did some horrible shit, right? But the other, like the vast majority was just like, yeah, homie just like had sex with my mom and was just like, yeah, fuck this kid. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to raise a kid, or like would come and go from their lives, right? Do a lot of emotional, psychological damage and just balance. And so like, yeah, and so that poem came from that, and those conversations that I had throughout those 5-6 years I worked at that school. And so that's the work I was doing, kind of like talking about like just, you know, these events and these things that happen that we carry that we don't really necessarily get to like always dissect, because it's always like work, right? You're in the very country now, so you have this opportunity. Don't fucking waste it. Don't fucking waste it. Like get the money, get the, you know, and you know, from an educated perspective, it's like, well, how about the fucking soul and the heart of the people, you know, and the emotional, psychological well-being of our youth, right? And you can't blame our parents, you know, speaking for myself, you know, because like they didn't have that, right? And here we have this country, as fucked up as it is, that's way better, you know, in a lot of ways than where we're coming from, but in a lot of ways it fucking sucks, and where we're from is a lot fucking better, you know. So you know, so yeah, that's the work I've been doing with youth, you know, just tending to like the fucking wounds of people, you know.
Yeah. So I want to get to the pattern here from the migratory pattern from how you ended up in Eugene, Oregon. But before we do that, let's hear another poem.
Cool. Because I've been talking a lot, I'll do the Brown Boys poem.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like all right. For brown boys who come and go, For brown boys who walked out like my father. For those who stayed to pick up the pieces like my stepfather. For us brown boys. For us fatherless children trying to fit the shoes of men we have never known, I know. I know so many battles go unrecognized. No purple hearts pinned to our chest, just tattooed life stories engraved in arms, callous hands from all the work put in, bruised knees from getting back up when we get knocked down, stretch marks on backs from being forced to grow up way too fast. For us brown boys, trying to hide behind beards and mustaches, trying way too hard to be as hard as possible, caught between body bags and survival, caught between macho ideals and proletariat revolutions. Look at how we confuse passion for violence. Look at how we romanticize guns over a love affair. I know balance can be such a dubious task for us brown boys. We brown boys are so full of contradictions. For us brown boys, who have been taught to be cautious of a tender touch, like when she caresses my back, I cannot help feel uneasy, even in bed. Let your guard down, brown boy. We don't always have to be in fight or flight mode. We deserve to be loved. We deserve to show love. We don't have to look for affection in the bottom of shot glasses. We cannot drown our pain. Trust me, it will learn how to swim. Sorrow does not have to be a burden. We make mistakes, but we are not the mistakes, brown boy. Who told you self-love was a battlefield? Who turned your tongue into a shotgun? Who taught you how to fight? I once heard someone say that for us dark ones, the act of breathing is rebellious. Remember, they were the ones that called the savages. They were the ones that desecrated our family tree. They turned us into thugs. They taught us to neglect our children. They told us women were inferior. And some days I want to shatter the image in the mirror. Want to break every last piece of my mother out of my smile. I know you too get tired of choosing between your hopes and your demons, of trying to hold the ends of the world, keeping them from falling. I know you don't want to crumble into pieces, brown boy. Remember that trees let go of their leaves in the fall, endure the winter so that they can bloom beautiful in the spring and provide shade in the summer, brown boy. We do not need street corners stained with candle wax, decorated with flowers and pictures of you. We do not need your mother crying and praying the rosary. So let every embrace you give set off a revolution. Let every kiss you give pull the trigger of your throat to heal with words. Let forgiveness become the pin to the grenade of your heart. Explode delicately. Smash those shot glasses on the floor. Fireworks announcing the new you. Let yourself be loved. Watch how much we can grow. Let every man that has walked out of your life become a reason for you to stay. Use these hands to help your children count, to help them learn the ABCs, to sing them lullabies, brown boys. We are not explosions waiting to happen. We are sunflowers learning how not to become contradictions, learning how to believe that we are beautiful brown boys. Let us commit the most rebellious act of them all. Let us love ourselves.
All forms and rounds of applause. So we got in the comment section, we got Jose talking about some being like Hoser Guerrero, talking about things being hot and black or something. I'm not sure if he's talking about the layout here on Zoom.
Yeah, so that was a callback from Cafe Nooba. It was it's hot and it's black.
Oh, okay.
It's hot and it's black, and Slam Nooba is we got heads, and then he tried to get something in Cafe Cultura started, you know, La Cultura Cura, but people were not going for it. A callback, we were like, whoa, you know.
All right. He also says we cut heads. Is that another reference?
That's to Slam Nooba. We cut heads.
Okay.
Because it was it started from I think one of the first open mics from Slam Nooba was at a barber shop.
Okay.
And the dude was like, "Yeah, we cut heads." Like,
yeah,
and so it started like we cut heads. We're gonna.
Yeah. Murder gas. So okay, cool. So let's I thought he was just jealous because you're on like the fancy looking Zoom, and I just had him on the other one. But the reason we're here is because the other one wasn't working. So nobody, you know, don't. And you always like put something up for people and they start complaining. Anyhow,
why didn't I get that one?
So you're in Eugene, Oregon, but before that you're born. Where are you born?
I was born in Colima, Mexico. which is Western Mexico, like between the states of it's its own state between the states of Jalisco and Michoacan. So Manzanillo is the big coastal city. We have a coastline, so it's about Manzanillo and Puerto Vallarta are about 2.5 hours apart, maybe. Manzanillo being south, but I grew up in the mountains.
So how old were you when you came to Oregon?
I was 8 years old. Yeah, I came to Oregon. And yeah, like I reunited, I guess, with my mom and my stepfather and my brother, and moved out here. And we were farm workers, and so helped out as a farm worker in the summers, even like fucking fourth grader. I was like, oh, no babysitting. I know what can babysit you. A fucking bucket and some fucking fruits, motherfucker. Pick, I was like, okay, we'll pick, So yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like growing up? In Eugene, Oregon. That's an interesting destination.
Yeah, so I've actually only been in Eugene for a few months. When we came to Oregon, we moved to the Hood River Valley, which is an hour east of Portland. And so that's like the city that people know, Hood River, right? It's a big touristy city. But then we actually grew up 25 miles south of that in a place called Parkdale, Oregon, or Mount Hood, Oregon, right? Kind of like at the base of Mount Hood, which is a huge fucking mountain and ski resort. But there's a valley there. Just I think the fucking like 10 years ago when I was like reading about and writing about this, talking shit to like the newspaper over there, it was like something like $90 million of like, that's how much industry of like agriculture industry is worth, right? It's like pears and cherries and apples, right? And that's how much of it is. It pumps into the economy, right? A lot of shit just goes all along the West Coast, fucking Japan and shit like that, But yeah, but growing up there, it was weird, man. It was really weird, You go from like a little small pueblo to like being secluded, really, and just being in this on this farm, which again, it's really fucking beautiful. Like the scenery is fucking beautiful, But you go from being just like tight knit community to just being in the middle of fucking nowhere and having to drive everywhere to see anybody that might look like you. I like to joke around, how like when people were like, oh yeah, Trump's America, Trump's America. I tell people, I was like, well, like I feel like I grew up in Trump's America my whole fucking life, because it was just like fucking rednecks, like their guns all the fucking time, and I was, you go to school and it's like that fucking tension was always there, like Mexicans and like, and like fucking rednecks. I was like, fuck, like it was always like that, so yeah, it was beautiful. The scenery was beautiful, but just, I mean, socially it was interesting. It definitely like, yeah, like it just really influenced how I think, or see the world, right? Like even now, like I see like camel and I'm like, oh fuck, and stuff, but yeah, it was. I'm glad it was in a beautiful place,
There you go. No, I mean that people think about Oregon, people who aren't from Oregon or even this side of the country, they think about Oregon, they think about Portland, right? And they think about like Portland, they think about like granola hippies, whatever they think about. They think about like they think about grunge or something like that. But or they think about zombie donuts or or bookstores or something. Whatever they think about Portland, they think about that, right? And they think of that as a whole state, but they don't really know that Portland, the Oregon, most of Oregon is a very rural and somewhat inhospitable place to people with melanin.
Yeah, for sure. And Portland itself, right? Portland itself, I think it's like, there are like two fucking crazy facts. One, I think it has like one of the biggest like per capita like Nazi fucking groups, right? And also like per capita has like one of the biggest rates of like hate crimes, right? And that's like Portland, like Portlandia, and like everybody's so liberal, blah 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 blah, right? And it's like fucking people are being like attacked on like the metro or like the public transit system, right? Obviously, you can talk forever about the fucking cops, right? And in a place like Eugene, right? Here as well, like it's seen as very like granola hippie friendly, blah blah blah, right? But I mean, the police department just within last year has killed 2 unarmed brown people and men, right? Unarmed, right? Like fucking unarmed, one inside a fucking school, right? And then the other one was just like going through the trash trying to get fucking cancer cell, right? Cops roll up, fucking shoot them. They close the case within 10 days, right? And so we think of these like places as like really liberal, but it's like they're just racist as fuck, whether it's from the liberal side or from like the fucking Trumpy rednecks, I'm gonna fucking shoot your face if you step on my lawn kind of people, right? And that's how white supremacy operates, right? It's like it doesn't really like have a fucking face. It just fucking operates and kills people, right? Regardless of your political affiliation or the city, if the city's welcoming or not, right?
Yeah. That's really intense. That's really. Oh wow. No, we're good from there. All right. It is what it is. So what brings you back to Eugene?
Yeah, a couple of things. My family. So after the farm, my family moved here. I think I was a sophomore in college, so about 2007, 2008, they moved out here. And we started working at a factory. All my family works in the factory now, right? And so my brother, my mom, dad, a couple of aunties work there. So they've been here for about a decade. So part of moving back to Eugene was to be close to them. I got nephews now. Parents are getting older, but also like I said, my partner's in. She is finishing her master's at the University of Oregon. So yeah, and I was like, it's a nice to come back home for a little bit. And we were like, yeah, we'll stick it out for like 3 or 4 years. We'll do like the capitalist thing, get like just capitalism meaning like working school is like real estate is cheaper here, so we'll like buy some real estate, some house, and like get a little bit of wealth, and then move back somewhere. But then we were like, mostly me, I was like, yeah, fuck this shit. Like I don't want to come back to this. At least move back. So like 3 or 4 years turned into like maybe a year, and now it's like, oh, when is June here? Like we want to move. We want to move.
Trying to get out, yeah.
And we're both like, yeah, we're like, the Southwest definitely grew on me a lot. I like fucking hate the desert when I first moved out to Denver, but like I just miss it. Just miss the Southwest in general so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's where we're at now. So.
I don't think I could live anywhere outside of the Southwest other than like maybe Chicago or something. I don't know. I don't want to be anywhere where like Mexicans or Chicanos or people of Mexican descent haven't like lived for at least 30, 40 years. So just places to go. It is something to connect to. Yeah, I don't want to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like it's interesting, right? Because like if I like. People are like, yeah, well, Denver's like not very diverse, and people are like, Denver's hella white, and it is hella white. But when you come to like from a place like from rural Oregon, it's like a fucking UN, dude. It's like so fucking diverse. And then I got friends from like fucking Harlem and Bronx and the eastern part of the states, and they're like, what the fuck? Like this shit's like a fucking cow town. And I'm like, no. You don't fucking go over, next to fucking rednecks.
No, you don't. You don't know. You don't know what Cowtown is.
Yeah, for sure. So, but I don't know, but I like it, man. It's really cool. If I hadn't like left Oregon and seen that the pastures are greener as far as more brown folks and more brown artists and people of color just in general who are artists and shit like that. And if I would have just stayed in Oregon, I would have been like, oh, this is great. Eugene is great and Portland is great. I probably would have had that outlook, but seeing how things could be, right? Especially if you add art to the mix, it's like, wow, like shit could like be better. So it's cool. Like the Southwest really provide that, or being around that. So
yeah. All right. Well, this has been really great. Can we hear another poem and then maybe some plugs, some future projects, some the project you got? But let's hear another poem first.
For sure, yeah. I'm trying to think which poem. I've been writing a lot, man. All this fucking pandemic and like shit. So, um, yeah, I like this poem. Um, it's called "You're Mexican." It's after Fatima Asghar, who I love her poetry. It's really really great.
Is this the one you tried to do on Tom Luis and Martin's IG and you kept getting shut off?
Yeah, like
That was the most censored IG live in the history of the gram.
yeah, it was great. What do you keep calling it? Insta Cointel Pro, or whatever. I was like, this is great. Someone called it the Insta Gulag. I was like, like, oh my god, yeah. So we'll see how it goes, man. No, so it's called "You're Mexican." You're Mexican until you go to a white college. Then you're a Latino, Latina, Latinoa, Latinx, Hispanic, her panic, everyone's panic. And everybody wants to tell you about the first time they visited Puerto Rico or Costa Rica or Ecuador. You let them know that that's not Mexico. What's the difference? They speak Spanish too. Insert pearly white teeth, smiling lips looking like nooses waiting to tighten around the neck of challenged. You're Mexican until you speak Spanish too much and you play banda too loud. Then you are too ethnic and a bit too dangerous. They like their salsa mild and sweet. They just want to tell you stories about some resort manicure for their lily pink bodies where the water is purified before it touches their skin, and the sand on the beach is made out of stars and it is lukewarm on their feet, and the seashells are individually polished every night and thrown on the ground before one of them asks for a cerveza in the morning. You're Mexican until until they find out you only got your papers a couple of months before starting college. Then you are their shot at redemption. Then you are a ticket to ease their white guilt. Then you are proof that the system is not broken, Alejandro. I mean, Alex. Every once in a while, they have to let a few of us make it to keep the carrot dangling in front of our faces. You're Mexican until they find out you grew up as a farm worker. Then you are a Yelp representative and they ask you, where is the best you pick a farm located? You're Mexican until you approach the dinner table and one of them says, here comes the beaner. And they all laugh. And one of them tries to have your back and he says, he's not that much of a beaner. They laugh. You sit with them, eat your dinner anyway because they are your friends. This is the price of the American dream. They will joke about running away to Canada if an election threatens their liberal lifestyle, white supremacy. It knows no borders. It is a global citizen with a passport anywhere. You're Mexican until you start calling yourself brown, until you stop laughing at their jokes. Then you are angry. Then you are like the rest of them. You're Mexican until you say, no human being is illegal, until you say, borders are just an idea we decided to build. Then you are ungrateful. Then why are you here? Then why don't you go back to where you came from? Because we planted and harvested the food on your plate. We deserve to eat it too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Makes me think a lot about it makes me think a lot about what's going on right now with the farm labor and this this health pandemic and
Mhm.
in many situations where people are living. I mean, it's if one person gets it, it's gonna spread real fast between people.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting, like seeing like how that like the rhetoric here in Oregon, right? Like, I think, I mean, obviously it was coming up with the fucking coronavirus and COVID-19, whatever the fuck, a lot of like communities of color, right, black and brown communities were just being affected, right, disproportionately, right, because fucking health system, blah 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 blah, right. Um, and so in Oregon, it's the same thing, right? It's like mostly brown. I think it's like the only state where brown people are like getting coronavirus at a higher rate than like black people, right? Mostly farm workers, right? And so I was reading a few articles on the, and the governor and like who's like really cool supposedly, right? And she's really awesome in a lot of ways, right? Um, her and like her cabinet are like blaming, like they're like, these farm workers are not staying home, and it's what the fuck? One,
Yeah.
like, like your government has not provided any health standards for like the fucking landowners, right? They haven't held them to those standards. Two, you haven't done any targeted outreach to those to the farm workers, right? And 3, growing up as a farm worker. Here, it's like the biggest thing they will do, or the thing that they would do is they put like a big fucking like announcement in English and Spanish with like font like this big, on like health, and wash your hands and all kinds of shit. But then we'd all have to fucking share one fucking bathroom, right? For like 16, 20 of us, right? Yeah. So it's like, you want to hold the farm workers to a fucking standard that you're not even holding your own landowners to, It's odd. The rhetoric, again, like liberal places are fucking whack as well, So it's interesting for sure.
I mean, it's set up that way. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing your experiences with that. I know a lot of people are very concerned about that, but they don't necessarily have some of the firsthand kind of knowledge of these things.
For sure.
It's really interesting. I remember watching this meme that was put up by Turning Point USA, which is a right-wing outlet, and they showed like non-essential workers, and it was a bunch of people in Hollywood, and essential, and it was like a farm worker, right? But it was like in that old school kind of white idea of like the frontiersman farmer kind of thing. But it was like a tiny little farmer in a giant field. So it was funny as hell because all this Raza was sharing it because there's a concept. They don't have a concept of some white Farmer John kind of American God thing. They have this concept, like, the campesino, right? So they thought that this was meant like, the campesino. So here it was, these right-wing people trying to make some like anti-Hollywood liberal. So I don't know what they're trying to say. But it ended up being like shared massively by Mexicanos who are just, proud to be like, that's right. Like we're the backbone. So that's just really, that's funny. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, so I asked my dad once, because he's been working the fields, in and out since he was like in this, like since the 70s, the same place, And I was like, hey man, I was like, have you ever seen like any like white person come? He's like, I seen one white dude once come to try work in the harvest. I was like, what happened? He's like, well, he lasted a day, and then the next day he got in his car all fucking sore and like drove off. I was like, yeah, but it's hilarious, But
yeah. So any plugs or any things that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, man. On Instagram at Alejandro writes. Alejandro like Alejandro and writes like writing. That's my Instagram handle. This Saturday, by Saturday I mean this Wednesday, I'm leading a workshop and featuring the Berkeley Slam, their open mic online. So I was supposed to be doing that anyway. So they're been gracious enough, and they're still continuing the virtual stuff. So that's coming up, and then the following week on Tuesday 28th, I believe, doing the same thing with Humboldt. The Humboldt Word Humboldt up in Arcata, Humboldt. In California, doing that stuff online. Working on a book. In the second book, hopefully the second one actually like gets picked up as some sort of publisher or something like that. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life other than just writing poems and putting them, in somewhere. So we'll see, where that goes. But trying to write a second book. So it's been in the works for the last few months, last couple of years, really. Slowly, as like I said, this poetry thing is just like kind of like a hobby that I have. It's not like something that I've tried to pursue in a more serious manner at all. So but yeah, a couple of things that I got going on, and trying not to freak out, and trying to keep my mom healthy, and hope that she's, and trying to laugh as much as possible, man. But,
why don't you when you're done with the manuscript, email me. I know a guy.
Word, we'll do, man. We'll do.
So thank you for joining me, and we'll put links to the things below, and I really appreciate it. And,
no problem, and thank you, man. Thank you for reaching out, and stay healthy, man, and touch your face all you want, man.
In my house, in
your house, in your house.
I'll wash my hands and I'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, talk soon.
All right, take care, man.